idea of advancing the cause of Christ is very clear. What did Jesus teach? We want to teach that. What did Jesus do? We want to do that. And sometimes that doesn't look like normal church. So sometimes church around here doesn't look and feel quite like normal church. There's things that we do that are a little bit on the edge. Things that are just a little bit unconventional. But you look at the ministry of Jesus and we see the same thing. The risk of loving everyone everywhere is profound. But Jesus didn't just do this on his own. He created a community. He created a new community of common people, of normal people. People with faults, flaws, and failures. People just like you and people just like me. And he called us together to love us unconditionally and then to bend that love out to a world in desperate need of love. Jesus called this new community the church. And the church is called to bring heaven to earth. In fact, that's what Jesus equipped us for. Jesus says, when you pray, here's what I want you to pray. Pray that your kingdom would come and your will would be done. Where? On earth as it is in heaven. This is the cause of Christ. Heaven to earth. And the way we see Jesus define heaven on earth is that everyone is loved. That not one person would be lonely. Not one person would be isolated. Not one person would be rejected. Not one person would be without love. That everyone would have enough. That there would be no more poverty. No more extreme poverty. No person who doesn't have enough to eat. No person without the basic necessities of shelter and clothes and basic health care. And that everybody would be free. That nobody would have an oppressor. Everyone would live with equal dignity and equal respect. We see the ministry of Jesus dedicated to that cause. Everyone loved, everyone has enough, and everyone free. And I want to leave you with two words today. Two words that are throughout the Bible, but two words that are so important. Remember and move. Remember and move. God calls us to remember. This is a tough word for me because I have a terrible memory. I have a terrible memory. I can't remember my name half the time. You can imagine being married to a person without a memory. In fact, very often Jenny would say, hey, Scott, remember that time when? And I'd look at her like, are you serious? You're asking me to recall something? And she looks at me with this very frustrated look. Oh yeah, I forgot it. Forgot you're dumb and don't remember your name. And I have a terrible memory, right? This brain is wired for next, right? And it's squirrel. And do something. I have a terrible memory. So for me, there's got to be a discipline of memory. Because we're called to remember what God promised. We're called to remember the cross. We're called to remember the heritage that's before me, this rowboat vision that Pastor Steve the Greater talked about. And then we see in Deuteronomy 5:15, remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. God is always, hundreds of times in the Bible, remember where you came from, so that you can know where you're going. That's why God instituted holidays to remember what He did in the past. He instituted one day a week, a day of rest, to remember what has happened in the past and remember what God promised. And then He gives us constant reminders to remember. So that's a phrase to write down, Jenny. Always remind Scott to remember. We need reminders to remember. It's so important. 1 Chronicles 16:12, remember the wonders He has done. Remember His miracles and remember His promises fulfilled. If we remember, we will know that our life has a context. We're not just here on our own as though we're disconnected from what God is doing in history. He is moving history forward. He is advancing the kingdom of heaven forward on this earth, and we're a part of that. And if we don't remember, we will believe our life is kind of this little island, and our life is all that we will see. Remembering allows us to see a history that we're a part of. That's why anniversaries are so important. Jenny and I just celebrated a couple months ago our 25th anniversary. I'm shocked she made it that far. And the reason why you have an anniversary is to be able to just sit down with each other as we did and just remember when we first met. And remember that first love and the first kiss and the wedding. And I remember it all. To remember our first child and our fourth child and however many we have. You just remember these things. It's so important that our life has a context. It's a constantly unfolding story, right? A constantly unfolding story. So it's good for us to remember where we've been and what God has done. To remember the foresight of these 7 families. Now this is big. I'll give you the short version. 7 families who were all Dutch. I believe all spoke Frisian, whatever that is. And these 7 families had a choice. Do we speak English or Frisian? I'm really grateful they chose English. Do we call ourselves Rancho Dutch Reformed Church? Or do we say that this is not just for the Dutch? Now we know if you ain't Dutch, you ain't. We know that. I'm not Dutch, I don't care. But they decided this is going to be a community church. Rancho Community Church. To remember the grace and perseverance and vision of our founding pastor and his family. To remember the boldness to move to a whole new site. I can't tell you what a risk that was. To move to a whole new site. The vision to equip the next generation through vibrant children's youth ministries in school. The compassion ministries that have been launched by the dozens to help people in need. We've got to remember that. But get this. Remembering is so valuable. But if the memories of the past are more exciting than a vision for the future, we're lost. Remembering is so important. But if the memories of the past are more exciting than a vision for the future, then we're lost. You know the famous proverb? Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish. When you're always remembering the good old days of the past, but yet you see nothing about the future, you just kind of are lost. Rancho has never been at that point where our memories of the past are more exciting than our vision of the future. And our vision for the future is exciting. It is very, very exciting. So the only thing more exciting than our last 50 years will be our next 50 years. So you got to come back in whatever year that's going to be. 2068, welcome you back. The next 50 years is going to be quite a ride. God is always leading us forward to a newer and brighter future. The final word we want to think about today at our 50th is not just the word remember, but the word move. The word move. Exodus 14, the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying? Stop your sniveling, Moses. I understand it's hard out here in the desert. You've been freed from slavery, and they were starting to think, boy, you know, this desert's hard, maybe we should go back. Moses, stop crying. Tell the people to what? Tell the people to what? Move. Keep moving forward, and trust me, they felt they were moving forward into desert and wilderness and hardship. God says, I know that's what it feels like now, but keep on moving. Don't just remember the past, move forward. Exodus 15:13, the very next chapter. In your unfailing love, God, you will lead the people that you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them. God says, move, move, move. Remember the past, but move forward. And I will lead you in love, and I will lead you in strength. God always leads in love. He told Abraham to go from the desert to the oasis. I will lead you in love. He told Moses, go from slavery to freedom. I will lead you in love. He told David, go from weakness to strength. I will lead you in love. He told Jonah, go from selfishness to serving others. I will lead you in love. Then he said to Jesus, I'm your father. You're my only son. I will lead you out into the desert, which seemed hard. But Jesus defeated darkness there. God led Jesus to the nation to preach and practice unconditional love. God led Jesus to the people in need, the least, the last, and the lost, to give them a hope and a future. And God led Jesus to a cross. And on that cross, Jesus took the shame, the scorn, the suffering, the sin of the world upon himself, and he died for it all and rose again from the dead in victory. And not only says to Jesus, move out of the grave, it says to all of us, move forward. There's a resurrection that you get to experience. A resurrection is the kingdom of heaven advances on earth. The old is gone. Everything is brand new. And what's brand new is a whole new community that is now sweeping the globe, a community of love and of grace and of service, a community advancing the cause of Christ. This is the gospel. Receive that gospel. Receive that good news. God loves you unconditionally. He's forgiven you unconditionally. When we believe that and receive that, all things are new. As Steve said earlier, talking about Kurt, maybe Kurt's even here, I don't know. But that transformation that happens when we are unconditionally loved and then empowered to love others unconditionally. That's the cause of Christ. So where do we believe God is moving us? Where's Rancho headed? What's the next 50 years look like? I want you to imagine 50 years ahead. Rancho is a church that makes our city like heaven on earth by loving everyone everywhere. See that? Rancho is the premier primary and secondary educational institution in the Inland Empire. And that school is available for all. For all. Those who have and those who have not. This Christ-centered equipping the next generation to lead this world forward. Rancho is a regional rescue mission ensuring that everyone in the region is loved. Everyone in the region has enough. And everyone in the region is truly free. And finally, Rancho is global. starting and supporting dozens of international humanitarian works in the name of Jesus Christ. The next 50 years is very exciting. We're going to close by taking up an offering and one more song from our band. In fact, our band wrote this song. It's called Hello Grace. It's one of my personal favorites. As youngsters get ready to take up the offering, know that this offering goes towards our county and efforts. It goes for every local and global ministry that we have to help people that are in need. And so we encourage generosity here. We encourage you to be generous, not towards the church today, but towards those who are in need, advancing the cause of Christ by loving everyone, everywhere. And right about 90 seconds into this offering, we're going to ask to stand, and we want you to sing and belt out of God's amazing